Welcome back, animal lovers, to Awakening with Your Animal Family. I'm Dr. Alan Schoen, your host of Awakening with Your Animal Family. And today I'm really excited to have as a special guest, Dr. Susan Wagner, who is the co-author of a book, Through a Dog's Ear, on sound medicine. Sound medicine is something that I've been so excited about and I've been using and studying for decades, and have used it, integrated into my veterinary practice in quite a number of ways. At the very beginning of my veterinary practice, I would go into other practices and I would hear them playing loud music or this or that. And I saw what that was doing to the animals, and it wasn't very soothing, but it's what different receptionists like to keep the energy up and everything. And so I started bringing in, just in my exam room where I was doing my acupuncture and other complementary therapies, I would have a little sound system with soft, quiet music, some Mozart or some just very healing sounds. And you immediately saw the animals calm down and quiet down, and you would see my clients take a deep breath and go, oh my gosh, this is so soothing. I feel like I'm in a spa. And it made me really appreciate the power of the healing power of sound. And then in my own travels, when I used to be on the big lecture circuit and flying everywhere on weekends, giving seminars, and the intensity of being in planes and airports and all that noise, I found that there were certain types of sound medicine, certain types of frequencies that I would just put on my noise canceling headphones on the flight or in the airport, and have it low enough that I could hear the announcement if we were boarding, but then I would put it on when I got on the plane and just put on healing sound frequencies, what are called binaural beats, where it goes back and forth between your left and your right brain, your left and right ear. And I would immediately go into a deep, deep meditation on the plane. And so that the time on the plane where a lot of people get anxious or it can be noisy and all the different distractions, I would just go into this deep meditative state and come out of the flight awake and ready to go for my next lectures or book tour. When Random House and PBS sent me on a 32 city book tour in 35 days back in 2001, when my book Kindred Spirits came out and the PBS special came out. This was before 9/11, and boom, every hour I was like on TV shows or radio shows, and then I had to rush to the airport, and at that time you could rush right in without all the security, and I would sit on the plane, put on my headphones, and boom, right away I'd go into this very zen, calm, peaceful state. And that's how I was integrating sound medicine way back then. Now, I was just so excited when Dr. Wagner went and co-authored this book, Through a Dog's Ear, and came out with a CD of quieting, relaxing sounds with Sounds True. And I immediately got those and got them for my old veterinary practice, and they started carrying it and playing it in dog kennels, and I would be recommending it to different animal shelters. And it's taken off, and you'll see many, many animal shelters and dog kennels and animal hospitals carrying it and playing these things. And the sound, our ears are part of this in creating an important holistic healing environment for all beings. And with this whole onset with COVID and the stress and the anxiety that so many people are feeling, I felt that sound medicine was really appropriate to bring that up right now. We're just waiting for Dr. Wagner. There seemed to talk about sound, some Zoom issues with her computer. So she's just restarting her computer, and she should be on in a minute or two. But I just wanted to give you that background, that is why I just feel sound and what it does to our ears and sound frequencies are so important in creating a healthy, happy environment for us and our animal families. And what we found is different vibrational frequencies have different impacts on the brain, on different brain waves. Some will stimulate alpha waves, some theta, some, and you can look this up. It's all over Google now, and there's numerous books and CDs on the different sound frequencies and how they stimulate different brain waves in us and in our animal friends. Okay, because we're not that different, you know. We keep on, one of the things I was working on for a new book is so many people, you know, and so many researchers are always looking for what animals, how we're different. And I'm saying, you know, we should just go under the assumption that we're similar and talk about, okay, if there are differences, what are the differences? But have the foundation being, okay, we're all the same and we have so many similarities. Where are the differences, but accept the similarities? Now, I'll just give you a little bit more background about Dr. Wagner before she joins us. She graduated from the Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine, and she's a veterinary neurologist, board certified by the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine, and whose pioneering work, she acknowledges her passion for the bioenergetic and spiritual interactions between people and animals. And that's how we first got connected over 20 years ago, where she came to some lectures I was giving, and we connected on these things. Dr. Wagner is also passionate about public health and spent time with the Ohio State University Managed Healthcare System, the faculty and their staff wellness programs, and wellness collaborative, as well as an integrative health and wellness initiative there. And she'll be chatting about that as well as the sound medicine. And again, she's the co-author of Through a Dog's Ear, Using Sound to Improve the Health and Behavior of Your Canine Companions. And she co-founded the Integrative Medicine Department at MedVet Medical and Cancer Centers for Pets in Ohio. And she's an adjunct faculty at the Ohio State University Veterinary College. So with that, what I found fascinating is, you know, where she has, from the neurology perspective, come through and is bringing in the neurology of the sound medicine. And she's also, one of the other things, if we have time today, we'll be talking about is Tesla energetics, how she's bringing Tesla energetics into veterinary practices. And we also talked about something that I've been talking to you about quite a bit right now, is the what I call CALM, the acronym CALM, for the Conscious Animal Lovers Movement. And what I'm amazed at is, as I've been bringing this up on Awake TV on different episodes, I'm getting so much feedback from everyone saying, oh my gosh, I want to be part of it. I want to be part of it. And so I just want to let you all know this CALM movement. And, you know, we're talking with the co-founders of Awake TV about actually having a whole show just on creating this CALM, this conscious animal lovers movement, harnessing the healing power of the love of animals, which we all can see now how important it is as we're in self-quarantine, how it's even more vital, the love of our animals and what that's giving to us and calming us, and us keeping them calm and them keeping us calm, and creating this calm, loving environment. So I would love to hear back from all of you as you're hearing more about this. Let me know how you'd like to get involved, okay? Because it came through me as in some deep meditations that this is something that needs to be started for the benefit of all beings. And then number two is that I was saying, oh my gosh, this is too much for me. And I would hear this cosmic chuckle from my inner voice saying, Dallin, don't worry about that. This is it's coming through you, but it's part of a co-creative movement with all these conscious animal lovers throughout the world, and everyone's going to be coming through with their part. So if you have any ideas and you're interested in becoming involved, please contact me either through Awake TV or through my website, through my email. There is Schoen office, SCHOEN office at gmail.com. And then we're creating so many people. One person is saying that their school's interested in helping me develop some online training programs in CALM, where I go over and start laying the groundwork for the 5 pillars of the conscious animal lovers movement, bringing in the neuroscience, the quantum physics, things we're going to be talking about today, and I've talked about on previous episodes, and how to bring all those in. And each one of you who gets excited about it, to me, your excitement is your inner voice saying, yes, I'm ready. I've been wanting to be part of something like this, and now it's being created. And I'm just, whatever label, the founder and the guiding light. But this is truly a co-creation from all of us. And our guest, who we're still waiting for, hopefully she's coming back on, is Dr. Wagner said not only is she really interested, but that many of her colleagues, veterinary colleagues, are really excited about becoming involved in this too. So this is something that's kind of spreading its wings and starting up in ways that I have no idea about. But this Awake TV and the Awakening with Your Animal Family is the beginning of this. And Bree is our tech diva goddess, and I'm sure she's emailing Dr. Wagner, seeing what's happening. I don't know if you're there. Bree's putting on chat. Yes, emailed her. Okay, so we're waiting to hear back from her. And she's well worth waiting for. She is a dynamo and, really passionate about this whole movement. And so basically the way I've incorporated sound medicine, as I said, in my exam rooms, but also when I go to horse barns, when I wrote the book, The Compassionate Equestrian in 2015, what I noticed going to different horse barns were that the horses were, like, if they were in a barn where it was filled with angry energy and loud, harsh music, the horses were more intense and more uptight and more anxious. And this was part of my compassionate equestrian movement, is to start training horse people and to create more harmonious, healthy sound environments in their barn. Because barns used to be beautiful sound environments. You'd hear the munching on the grain, the horses sighing, the people just being there quiet. And then as the environments changed and different grooms were more into heavy punk music or different sounds that were not necessarily in resonance with calm, quieting environments in the barn, they got noisier, and then the horses got more anxious. And as I started suggesting bringing in quieter music, the clients and the horse barn said, wow, as soon as we changed the sound in the barn, the horses got quieter, everyone started getting more relaxed, the grooms got more relaxed, the riders got more relaxed. So this relates to any environment we're in. And going back to our homes, where you're at home and in self-quarantine or sheltering in place or safe in place, whatever label we want to put on it. I prefer more positive things like safe in place and sheltering in place. But how important sound is, like if we're feeling anxious, it's important to create a healing, quiet sound environment. And you can Google, there's so many of these on YouTube now that you can just, put in, okay, healing sound frequencies. You can put in healing sound environments for my animals or for me, and so many things come up. What I like about Dr. Wagner's CD, which you can get from SoundsTrue.com, is it's a regular, here it is, this science-based CD, and you can just play it over and over again in your animal, in a kennel or an animal hospital or at home. Like when you're at home and you want to be quieter, you can play that. And it's based on Mozart, so it's very calming. But also that sound medicine, lots of animals these days deal with separation anxiety. And there's when their human family leaves and they're left at home and they're bored and anxious and they're, say, in an apartment, they're hearing other noises and they're fearful, playing some sound medicine, some non-stop CDs, or just having a YouTube, that plays for hours of different healing frequencies, that can make your animals much calmer, whether it's birds, dogs, cats, and you can have that. With the nice thing with YouTube is there's video with it, and some animals like watching that video, but it's really the sound frequencies that calm them down. So many animals these days are feeling anxious at home, feeling anxious with their families being at home. There are different jokes about the dog going, wow, I've never been walked so much in all my life, or a cat saying, oh gosh, I used to enjoy being quiet and alone and sleeping here all day, and now I have all this company. And we don't know all the things that go through their minds, like old Gary Larson cartoons, but we can all see that. And so what I would suggest, again, hopefully Dr. Wagner's computer will be working and she'll be getting back on here. We tried her computer and it was freezing up a little bit beforehand, so she's rebooting it. But anyway, is the essence of sound medicine is creating a sound, quiet, healing environment. Once I took a lot of training with someone, and you may be interested in exploring him. He's a little bit further out than, like my whole journey has been bridging science and spirituality. And as a veterinarian, as a progressive, integrative, holistic veterinarian, bringing the two together. So, but one that I have tremendous respect for is Tom Kenyon, TomKenyon, tomkenyon.com. And Tom had spent like 15 years developing these sound frequencies called acoustic brain research, where he studied the effects of different sounds, different chanting, different ancient traditions on the brain, and came up with this whole series called the acoustic brain research. And then from there, he has an amazing 4-octave voice, one of the most amazing voices I've ever heard. And I took trainings with him for the last 2 years on his approach to sound medicine, on awakening consciousness and raising the vibration of consciousness, which is what Awake TV is all about, is raising the vibration of humanity. And Tom's approach is very unique. Some of you may not resonate with it, but some of you may. So I would suggest also checking out Tom Kenyon. And what I like to do is to educate and empower you and give you different resources that you can look up. There's so much on sound medicine now. And like with everything else, you have to use discernment, because the question really is, especially with sound, is does it resonate with you? Okay, when we had some episodes, we interviewed the scientist Roland McCready from HeartMath, who is now giving these global meditations on Awake TV, which I encourage you to look at. It started on Saturday and was one today, and there'll be 2 more for next 2 days, where he reviews all the science on in our heart brain and what different sound frequencies do to our heart, aligning our heart. I'm just seeing from Bree, I'm on the phone with Dr. Wagner. Okay, that's great. So she's trying to help her get online here. So hopefully she'll be joining us. She's almost on. Awesome, Bree. I'm so grateful. Bree is our tech diva goddess at Awake TV that keeps the whole thing going. And she's just amazing, besides being an animal lover and loving all the stuff that we're talking about, because it's helping her and her cat. And so Dr. Wagner should be on shortly, but the key is discernment and finding out which sound frequencies resonate with you. And I would encourage you to watch Roland McCready's interviews that I had with him on Awake TV, as well as the meditations, global meditations that he's doing based on sound medicine over the next few days. And here we are, we have the amazing, awesome, radiant Dr. Susan Wagner joining us.
Hi, so sorry for the technical glitch there.
Oh, no problem. Those are happening these days with Zoom, and I'm just grateful to have you on. So
Yeah.
I've introduced you already with your amazing bio and your
Oh,
fascination and your passion for Tesla energetics and for bringing in bioenergetics and spirituality with the human animal bond. And we talked about just on sound medicine in general and about your book a little bit through the dog's ear and the CD. So if you can just bring on, okay, where you're coming from with all of this, a little bit about how you evolved your passion for this from being a veterinary neurologist to getting into all of this, and how that evolved into writing the book and creating the CD.
okay. Well, like anything, it's one of those stories of serendipity. So I was actually had left my faculty position at OSU and was working with the human healthcare people to get the integrative health center going and some wellness stuff. And an undergraduate student reached out to me and said, hey, I want to do a project with neurology and music, but I need somebody to help me. And I said, well, I'm a neurologist with animals. And I said, I'm a neurologist and I'm a musician, but I really don't know music therapy. So I said, let me go see what I can do. So I reached out, found Joshua Leeds and Lisa Spector. Lisa's the pianist. Joshua's a psychoacoustic expert. And I called them and said, hey, I have this project. And they said, oh, by the way, we'll love to help you, but we have a project. So there you go. It was born out of that. And so we looked at what they found was Lisa would foster working dogs, helper dogs. And she found that if she played certain kinds of music, they would relax more. So they wanted to create this music and then test it. And so, I came in with, okay, here are the things neurologically. I mean, Joshua, absolute expert in psychoacoustics. In fact, if anybody's really interested in sound therapy in the brain, his book, The Power of Sound, is just a must read. It's really good. So he knew the human brain. And I said, well, things are pretty similar. So, helped with heartbeats and things that we should do and tones. And then they created the music. And then we set out to test it in kennels and veterinary offices and homes. And so we found just some great results. And then from there, we decided to write the book and put out the CDs and just had a great time. And I learned a tremendous amount about sound and how it affects the brain.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
Yeah.
I always love to hear these
Yeah.
stories of synchronicity, or
Yeah.
I joke and I call it synchrodestiny.
Yeah.
I took the term from Deepak Chopra. When you follow the synchronicities in your life,
Yeah.
it becomes your destiny.
Exactly.
And listening to that. So I love to hear how other people have listened to their inner voice, allowed for the synchronicity to unfold and the magic to unfold.
Yeah.
With this magic, Bree just was nice enough to say, actually, with us starting late because of the Zoom glitch, we have till 6:20. We can keep on and it'll be available. So no rush. We can, and it was actually worked out well because it allowed me to share my background on sound medicine and how I explored it, creating sound environments for my acupuncture patients and creating a calmer environment for them so that they weren't so anxious and the people weren't so anxious in a busy animal hospital.
Exactly.
I would, the animal hospital was busy. It was before your CDs came out. And so I would just have a little CD player in my exam room and play soft healing music. And you could see immediately the dogs calm down, the people calm down. They go, I feel like I'm on vacation when I'm holding my dog getting acupuncture.
Exactly. It's good for both of them. It really is.
Yeah.
And what is interesting is that the music actually entrains with our brain waves and our heart rate. So it's a physical process. In the study of human sound, they call it psychoacoustics because there's an emotional piece to it, the psychology of it and the physiology of it. And in the animal world, we call it bioacoustics. But I really think that as I do this more and more and study it and look at the research coming out, I think there's a psychoacoustic part of this as well. I think there's an emotional piece with the animals, beyond the physiology. So the cool thing about calming music for the animals or people is that it's kind of like meditating. It's taking your brain waves down, your heart rate down, calming your physiology, and then if it's something that you like, then you get the emotional piece too. But I would tell my clients, I can't teach your dog to meditate, but we can put this music on for half an hour a day and let that part of the autonomic nervous system that is like, we're all walking around just below fight or flight, everybody's tense, the animals are feeling that, so we can take that down physiologically with the sound. And it's not just the music. I think you got it. You have these noisy veterinary offices, and part of it is really, we talk about this in the book, is having people just sit and take a sound inventory. What are the sounds that you hear? Because we just kind of start to tune them out. And the animals are very sensitive. I mean, their hearing is much better than ours. Their energy fields are much more sensitive than ours. So we have to I always advise people, just sit and listen to what your animals are hearing. Turn off the TV. If you're not watching it, turn it off. I can't tell you, when I started doing house calls for energy medicine, it gave me a whole different perspective of how I would ask a history in the office. And I never thought to ask about, how much TV do you watch? What's going on in the household? Even with like behavior type things. I was helping one cat with some extensive fear stuff. So I went to the house. Well, there was construction and they were in a new neighborhood. So it was constant beeping and, things like that. And I'm like, all right, we humans know what that is, but this is stressful. So it's beyond the music. It's creating a calmer sound environment, and that's going to help everybody all the way around.
Yeah, and the calmer environment, I mean, from a neurophysiologic perspective, like you said, we live these days, especially in sympathetic arousal stress mode.
Yep.
Sometimes below the surface, but these days, not
yeah
so.
These days we got enough to trigger right up. Yeah.
Right. And the different sound frequencies bring us back into the parasympathetic, more relaxed mode.
Yes.
And that's great what you mentioned about the house call and the construction, because I know some of my old clients in New York, and they would talk about the stress of, they moved from the suburbs into New York City and they're in a co-op, and now their dog, the neighbors are complaining, it just barks incessantly when they're alone in this apartment. Well,
yeah.
What else is going on? The dog was used to a private house, and now it's in a co-op with all these other apartments and all this noise, and the hospital, the sirens, the police sirens, everything. You can't blame the dog. The dog is freaking out about all this abnormal, stressful sound environment, and then it's left alone in the apartment, thinking something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you deal with, because that I think is happening more and more as we're getting more congested into cities. And as we get more congested into cities, what I've found, where a part of my practice was in Manhattan, and when I was on staff at the Animal Medical Center, I would go into New York and I was stressed out. I lived on top of a mountain in upstate New York, and I would drive in and I could feel my whole energy tense up as I got into more and more traffic, and I was there. And then I learned all these different techniques early on in my career to breathe, to slow down, to create a smile, and the smile then changes your neuroanatomy and neurophysiology. And, I'd walk into the Animal Medical Center, which was the largest animal hospital in the world at the time and the #1 place outside of veterinary schools. And the receptionist would say, "Gosh, you come in and you're so happy and so smiley. And I go, well, it's a choice
Yeah.
and it takes practice,
Yeah, it does.
and then I would be in in the reception area and in the exam rooms, and they'd have 20 exam rooms. And I'd always try to choose the ones at the far corner that were the quietest. And I would put on a little CD player, and my clients, they would, I'd put the needles in one dog and then leave them with their dog being quiet and then go to the next one and the next one. And
Mhm.
they would say, this is the quietest, most relaxing time in my entire life.
Yep,
And they go, my dog and I
it
just
was.
put our heads together, lie down and relaxed.
Right, right.
And that's what happens. And it's so important once you see those situations and how sound and quiet can create that and change both the sympathetic to parasympathetic in both us and our animals,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
that can change.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to hear more about how doing house calls, your neurology, how you brought all that in and how
Yeah.
that changed the way you practiced and the way you've lived.
Oh, yeah, I can't even begin to tell you it. When I started my neurology residency, I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, fatigue, whatever those things are. So I was really just feeling it and having just a hard time. And a friend got me a gift certificate to cranial sacral therapy. Of course, I kind of rolled my eyes, and but I thought she paid for it, such a kind gesture. Well, of course it worked, and that started this journey of just this curiosity of like, how did that work? And what else is out there? And that, that's where it started. I think people of our generation, we have a story. I tell my younger vet students, like, you guys can just come into it because you're interested. We usually had a story. So then I just started learning about it and reading and trying to figure out the quantum physics of how energy medicine worked, because that's where I started. I went to Healing Touch for Animals. And then, I just started bringing it into my neurology practice as much as I could, being in a very conventional, still in academia at that time. But I had a lot of colleagues that were very open minded, and they would help me facilitate doing some of these things. And then just over the years, learning different things just like you did, and just bringing it in that toolbox, and I remember when I was doing some neurology recently, a couple of years ago, and it was just really fast paced and, very busy. And I stopped and I thought, oh, wait a minute, I'm forgetting to be me. Like, I was just going through the motions. I was like, no, 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 I need this herb, or I need to do this. I was kind of forgetting that. So when I get frustrated with colleagues because they don't think of adding in a complementary modality, I think, oh, I just experienced that. We all get in our groove. So sometimes we forget. But now I can't even fathom not bringing all of this together. I mean, you look at the whole picture. It's the environment, it's the sound. If people need to create a more calming environment, they might use essential oils, some herbals, meditating themselves, doing those things, energy work for the animal, for themselves. That helps to just ground everything, so that even though they might be in a busy city, their environment, the animal will start to feel like, okay, this is my safe place, um, and so that's kind of how I start. But it all becomes just one entity. I can't do neurology now without all these other things. That just doesn't make sense to me anymore.
Now, are there specific rhythms or frequencies that you can share with the audience that to guide them on, I was sharing before you came on, different resources where they could go.
Yeah.
And so if you could explain to them a little bit more about the frequencies, the rhythms,
Yeah.
what your suggestions are for them to create that environment. Because,
Yeah.
I did that. What I found for me, as like our journeys back then, it didn't exist. We learned veterinary medicine, and then it was drug surgery and a
Yeah.
little bit of nutrition, but
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
And, when I first started bringing in acupuncture at the Animal Medical Center, and everyone was like, what?
What are
There's
you
just
doing?
drugs
Yeah.
and surgery, and that's it. And I said, well, it's applied neurophysiology. It's applied,
Yeah.
And then they gradually start opening up as they saw the animals get better. That all had been recommended for euthanasia at the time. And then I used to joke and say another case of spontaneous remission following acupuncture, And
Exactly.
but back then I was also integrating it and meditating at home, because I realized that for me to be centered before I went out to the animal hospitals or the horse barns was essential for my well-being.
Yeah.
And then what I started finding was my dog and my cat would just come and lie down and
Yeah.
meditate with me.
Yep. Yep. They feel it. They absolutely, everything is rhythm. And what we found in the research is that the lower frequencies are more calming. And the slower frequencies, which makes sense, or slower tempos, that makes sense, right? If something's slow, it's going to entrain the heart rate, your heart rate's going to slow down. But when you get to the tone of it, if they really need to have some calming in the environment, lower tones versus the high pitches. The high pitches make our brain pay attention. There's something called the orienting response. And oftentimes it happens, we're not even aware of it. Something happens in the environment. Our brain has to stop for a second, pay attention to it and go, all right, is that a threat? No, that's not a saber-toothed tiger. That's just the guy next door. And then you come back to it. So the more complex it is as well. So if you have lots of different instruments or lots of different sounds, the brain has to work harder to figure that out. So if we're really wanting to create that absolute calm, what we found is slow, low pitches, one instrument like a piano. So that'll give the calm. But I also think it's important, you don't want to have it all the time like that. So to kind of mix it up. So there may be times when you have a more complex music, like maybe some strings with a little bit higher pitch. And kind of what I've found that words and singing sometimes, unless it's like a chant, that makes the brain pay attention more. So there's things on the web now everywhere. Like there's one group, I think it's called Vitamin String Quartet or something. So it's like Beatles music and uplifting music, but with strings. So we kind of go, ooh, I remember that song. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I know all the words to that Beatles song. Our dog or cat may not know it's a Beatles song, but the strings and the uplifting beat might make them feel a little bit better. So you can kind of really create a flux of, all right, calming time here, more uplifting time here, and then quiet time. Let's just make it quiet. Turn off the TV, turn off the music, a little deep breathing. Like I said, they absolutely feel that. They feel we're nothing but a big energy field, and they pick that up. So it's important to have that quiet time too.
Yeah, exactly. Quiet, all of that.
Yeah.
So, and that's wonderful. Thanks for bringing up about tone.
Yeah.
And, I see that actually in the wildlife, where I moved from, well, I've always lived most of my life after being raised in New York, but as a veterinarian, I had my practice out in the country, but I would come into New York to work at the Animal Medical Center to get complementary alternative medicine accepted at the place.
Yes.
And
God bless you for doing it.
Oh my God, what that did to me, but it was good. It served its purpose, and it got the message out. It was all perfect.
Yeah.
But the contrast of driving down from the mountaintop that I lived on, and then being in traffic in Manhattan, and then being at the AMC.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, it was quite a contrast. So it showed me my own stress levels, how it changed, and then what I could do to manage it.
Yes. Yeah.
So with that, where I live now in this cabin on the small island in British Columbia, I share my garden with a herd of deer that I've known for 7 generations.
Oh,
And the
wow.
wild peacock and the eagles and the seals and the otters and the whales. And when I sit in my garden and I watch, as soon as I sit there and just me quiet down to nature, then the deer come through the gate, the peacock comes over, and just like where my dog and my cat would come and sit with me and meditate with me at the beginning of the day before I took off, now I find these wild animals that could be anywhere that they want. They're free, and they come over and they will just lie down all around me.
Yeah. Yep. I think one of the happiest times of my life is when I was doing, I always wanted to be a zoo vet before neurology. That was my real first love. And so I got many, many years later, when I was doing energy medicine, I got to go to the zoo and behind the scenes, and I was working on a tree kangaroo. This is a wild animal. And I would come in, and she had a kind of an inside and an outside, but she would be on her inside enclosure, and she had a big tree. And I would come in, and she would see me and walk across the branch, come down the other way, turn around, because her back was always sore. So I could just stand there and work on sending energy to her back. And she looked at me, and I knew that this wild animal knew exactly what was happening. And that is a feeling that is just unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. And one of the, some really fun is when my mentor, Carol Comator, who founded Healing Touch for Animals, if she would be in Columbus or wherever we would be, we'd go to the zoo. She's the person you want to go to the zoo with, because all the same thing, they're all coming. I'm like, ooh, this is like a front row at Disneyland. Yeah, they're just all coming to feel that energy.
That's
so,
my peacock, if you heard it in the background.
Yeah, there you go. You
Yeah.
try to get in on the conversation. So they
Yeah.
know exactly what's going on. They're all very intuitive, and they feel that. So it's awesome.
You know what I'm excited about listening to you? I mean, there's so many things because we're in such resonance. And, but is the camaraderie, you know, like when I was first going to Animal Medical Center, I had this idealism. I was this idealistic animal lover, like all of us, many of us who come into it, but then we get programmed down. Oh, it's all science, it's all neurology or surgery or medicine or whatever. And as I started opening up and just saying, you know, something, I don't care. I can play the science game. I have my master's in neurophysiology. I can talk to you about the neuroscience, everything. But I'm just going to start saying, you know, like we communicate with the animals, all of us. And this is so much why we came into veterinary medicine, but then our hearts got programmed down to focus on our brain and not on our heart. And that's why I bring in heart math. And as part of the conscious animal lovers movement that is unfolding, heart math is a foundation for it, because it's helping us reconnect to the rhythm of our heart space and our heart brain and connecting that. And it brings me great joy to hear, you know, like as veterinarians like yourself, myself, Dr. Karen Becker, who was on earlier, and Dr. Marlene Siegel, who was on earlier, there's more and more veterinarians are saying, you know something, let's acknowledge animals are communicating with us all the time. They're talking to us all the time. They want to be in a harmonious field.
Yes,
right?
they do. They sense it.
When I taught, in my last book, The Compassion Equestrian, I talk about the transspecies field and the compassionate field. And the transspecies field is what you and I, we experience when we're in a crazy busy animal hospital, and all the people, the technicians, the kennel people, the clients, the staff, and us are all in there, and the animals are like, oh, you know, and then the compassionate field is where one person like yourself, who's taken that trainings, different trainings, and there are many different types that bring us back into center. And then we say, oh, we can have an impact on the field. And that's what I call the compassionate field. We're taking the research from the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds, where at the University of Wisconsin with Dr. Richie Davidson. And when I had done a think tank retreat with him 20 years ago, and we talk about, you can change the field. Okay, just by you changing how we are, then we can impact on the field in that animal hospital or that animal shelter, or at home, like what you're saying in that house, that apartment where the construction is going on. Once we are aware of that, and then we can share that with our clients, with animal shelters, barns, zoos, all of it.
Yes.
We can create these healing, more compassionate field environments.
Exactly. And, a lot of people still think energy medicine is crazy. There's no research to support it. And there's a ton of research, number one. And I always say it's not crazy, it's quantum. And, and for people to just understand that everything in our body, even those small electrons, those protons, those things we learned about in science class, those are bursts of energy. They're vibrations. And so we're like that pebble in a pond, right? We're vibrating, and then we give off a vibration. That's physics. There's nothing crazy or woo-woo or magic about it. It's pure physics. And so we interact, like you said, and that one person that just starts to breathe deeply, get into coherence, as heart math would say, you're changing your tune. It's like an orchestra. So, if my sister was a professional musician, her ear was incredible, so she could pick out one person in a section and go, oh, you're a little flat. And so she might be able to hear that. Maybe the audience couldn't. But if the whole section of instruments is out of tune, even the audience is going to hear that. Right. And so it's just a matter of creating that good energy that your body's putting off, that other people feel it. And I tell people, everybody's experienced this. What do we say? The tension was so thick in a room, you could cut it with a knife. Now think about that statement. How do you feel somebody else's tension if you're not touching them? What are you feeling? You're feeling just the electromagnetic radiation coming off of everybody's bodies. And if you're angry, it doesn't feel so good. So there's nothing woo-woo about it. It's very much based in physics. And so that's the fun part. And people like Richardson or Davidson and all these other wonderful researchers that are going on, it's such a fun time because we're getting the equipment to be able to do this. Where 50 years ago we couldn't, we got functional MRI, we got squids, which are super quantum interference devices. I mean, we have all these things, and we're still just scratching the surface. We're not anywhere close to, being where we need to be to research a lot of this stuff technologically, but we're getting there, and it's fun. It's just like, wow, this really is very science, and people make fun of me. I'm like, no, I'm the most scientific one in the room, folks. You explain Einstein's theory of relativity, and then we'll talk. Of course, I can't, but I don't tell them that. So I just make it sound like I get it, right? So it's a lot of fun, and it's, in 50 years from now, they'll look back and go, oh, weren't they cute?
Right.
It's the days of all these crazy doctors that wash their hands. Why would they do that, right? Doctors that used to start washing their hands, other doctors made fun of them. Why do you need to do that? Now we're like, well, what are we doing all the time now? We're washing our hands. So it'll be that way in 50 years. They'll just go,
well, I've seen it even from the 40 years that I started pioneering this, and everyone said, gosh, Dr. Schoen used to be a good vet. What happened? Then
went over to the dark side. Yep.
And then they started saying, oh, maybe he's onto something. All the animals we're referring to him that we recommend for euthanasia, most of them are getting better. I guess I need to look at this. And like what you said is, I like, it's feeling the field.
Yes.
The field can actually be felt. The quieter we get, the more sensitive we are to the vibrational frequencies of the field.
Right.
What I'm
exactly.
curious about is in your research, you have through the dog's ear.
Hmm.
Have you looked at it, from, is it the same for cats, for horses, for zoo animals, for, yeah,
Yeah, for any animal. We did look at a separate study in cats, but the data was, it was so hard because it wasn't like they were a bunch of kittens. Like, how do you, because with the dogs, I had a behaviorist help with, okay, what behaviors do we need to look at? Like the first phase, it was like, are they laying down? Do they go to sleep? And the second phase, I got very detailed, salivating, walking around, very detailed behaviors on stress. But when it came to the cats, we were looking at them in the home environment, and it was just too hard to tell, well, are they going to sleep because they're a cat, or is the music calming them? So my theory, my hypothesis is that yes, it's going to, because brains are very similar, it's going to, if you stick to those principles of low tones and slow, I don't care if it's a goat or a horse or a cat or a person, it's going to work. There have been some other studies, looking at primates and trying to see what kind of music do they like. Again, that's where that emotion comes in. So I think on one level, physiologically, it could work across all species. And then on the other level, I do think there's a little psychoacoustics to it, that I think there is maybe a preference that a primate might have, or even I remember a vet student telling me their horse, I think they did dressage, but the horse always trained best when she played Santana. I'm like, well, I love Santana.
yeah.
So I think there's something to it, so I think it's both worlds.
Well, I do think the psychoacoustics that you mentioned, I think that's part of quote unquote coming out as veterinarian.
Yeah, of
Yes, duh. Of
yeah,
course they have personalities. Of
course
course
they
they have
do.
emotions.
Yeah,
Like I remember in my first book, Love Miracles, and even in Kindred Spirits, I talk about my senior year at Cornell, and I was petting a dog after surgery, and the intern said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, the dog's in pain. I'm trying to calm it down." He goes, "There's no study that they document that there's pain." And I was like, hello? But back then, that was
yeah,
the
that's right.
attitude.
I know. Oh, I know. Think you're right. How far have we come since you and I started practicing? I
Right.
mean, it really, it's come so long with the fear-free handling and people really understanding it and just evolving and evolving. It's just, yeah, it's come a long way from when we
Yeah.
started.
So you're feeling, I'm just curious. I love the spontaneity of these, on my show, because we can just get into things that
Yeah.
we didn't plan on.
Right,
And
right.
so what's your experience with psychoacoustics? Any insights that you care to share on that?
Well, in terms of like with animals,
Yeah, with animals.
yeah, I think that there is definitely an emotional piece, and I think, and this kind of relates to my other passion that I call the Tesla principle, but I think animals, they feel our energy and they also mirror us. So, I think that if a person likes a certain kind of music, chances are the animal may like that or feel want to be in the room when that's playing. I always tell my students, like, I'm a punk rocker from the 70s, none of that disco stuff. So if and my husband's a real audiophile, so we're playing certain kinds of music, the animals, we don't have them locked in that room. Maybe they'll want to leave or maybe they'll want to stay. So I think that that's important, but I also think that they mirror us. So I think some of the psychoacoustics are truly their personalities, but how much of their personalities is mirroring what they want us to see about our personality. And that's the same thing with animal communication. People say, oh, those animal communicators, they're nothing but charlatans, they're crazy, they can't do that, animals can't talk. Well, if you're a Star Trek fan, like I am, there was this thing called the Universal Translator. That's how the Klingons could talk to the Earthlings. And I think it goes like that. It's a frequency, it's an energy, and then it's just translated in a way that our minds can process. But you're really getting down to everything's at a quantum field level, right? Everything. And then it's just taken in. And so a true animal communicator takes that energy in, that and then it translates into words that can come out. So when we really get down to it, it's all very quantum and very much psychoacoustic. Just yeah, definitely.
So before I want to hear more about your Tesla energetics, how you're integrating it. But before that, just for the audience, if you had to list, like, say, the 5 or 10 conditions, quote unquote, that animals respond to with the best with sound medicine, something like I was talking while we were waiting for the computer glitch, about them for separation anxiety.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Any anxiety. And what I learned in doing the project, I mean, I learned so much from Jostro with the psychoacoustic, and then I learned from working with the behaviorists at Ohio State. You know, it was like, oh, things that yeah, I could see the big anxiety. You know, I could see them ripping up or chewing something, but they taught me to look for the more subtle things. And the other thing they taught me is that, you know, if a dog, let's say a dog, for example, has thunderstorm anxiety or separation anxiety, generally speaking, there's an underlying baseline anxiety. You know, you might say, oh, here's the trigger, it's the fireworks or whatever. But generally speaking, if they get down to it, there's a general anxiety. So even in doing like pain studies and looking at painful animals, there's an absolute link to our higher centers of the brain and the emotional centers and how we process pain. I mean, the pain research that's coming out now is just incredible. So yes, any anxiety, I don't care what it is, you can definitely, you want to add in the calming music. And then pain, you know, and it made me think about when we have an animal with really bad degenerative arthritis or some other chronic pain, do we ever ask in our history, well, do they have any anxiety? You know, are the thunderstorms anxiety? What other kind of, because that's another level that you can bring in besides whether it's acupuncture, herbals, or what homeopath, whatever you're going to do for the pain, you add in something for the anxiety. And you could argue that any chronically painful animal is going to have some level of anxiety. But so pain, anxiety, really anything, if you look at the healing research, as you calm that sympathetic system and upregulate the parasympathetic and just balance the immune system and the nervous system, that's going to help the immune system. So you could make the argument really that any chronic thing that the animal has going on, if you can get them in balance and get them calm, that's going to strengthen their immune system. So I would argue you could use it with anything, but the main ones, absolutely for sure anxiety, absolutely for sure pain, just absolutely those two things.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's, I love the way you bring it in as that's the foundation. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know at different times I've had some chronic pain, you know, like
Yeah.
in my hip or this or that.
Yeah.
And it does raise your whole sympathetic stress level.
It does.
And that when I use sound medicine, which I use regularly,
Yeah.
okay, a couple times a day, I'll just listen to different sound frequencies that put me in a state of
Yeah.
connecting to what I call the beyond, whatever
Yeah.
label we
Yeah.
call the beyond, all that is. And my peacock is agreeing. And, you
Yes.
know, the neuroscience cliche, you wire what you fire, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so the more we wire, the more we fire calming, parasympathetic, elevating feelings
Mhm.
from psychoacoustics,
Yes.
then the more if we get wired that that's who we are more and more. And
Yeah,
then all we have to do is think about the
right.
sound or the Beatles song or
Yeah,
whatever,
whatever it is. Yeah.
and you go, ah,
Exactly. You're retraining your body, your nervous system to just calm down. And I don't know how much you use, but I've also loved using tuning forks. It's not just music or frequencies through instruments or voice, but tuning forks are fantastic. And they can just boom, you hit that frequency and you've got both the psychoacoustics, you've got the bioacoustics of what it's doing to your brain. It's clearing that energy field. They're just like, oh, yeah, I just love working with tuning forks. And
have
that's
you
something,
worked with the tuning forks with animals? Because
yes.
a friend of mine
Yeah.
in a colleague in Japan has really, and he was a liver surgeon, okay, boarded
Oh,
liver,
wow.
surgeon. His wife was boarded in internal medicine and everything. And then he got into acupuncture. And then now he's totally into tuning forks for healing animals and finding the resonance with the different parts and seeing how
Yes.
the animals respond. So
Yeah.
what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I got introduced to it in one of my healing touch for animals. She brought in they're called pair 5 forks, and that was and an ohm fork, that ohm frequency. And so I got introduced of using the ohm, some forks like the ohm, just directly on the body at certain points. Again, it's like a resonance, and especially up and down the spine. It just it works wonders. And then the pair fives for the whole environment, and then have worked with other different types of tuning forks to, again, just clear that energy field, help them feel calmer. And one of the specific things that I'll bring it in for are those degenerative neurologic conditions or developmental conditions where they have a lot of problems with the spinal fluid backing up. For example, the Cavalier King Charles, where they have the malformation in the back of the skull, and then the pressures build up. They get a lot of they're scratching at their ears, and they get weird deafness and pain. And I remember when I was working on a study of those dogs, and I was doing the neuro exam, so it was very traditional. And I found that the expected pain up this way, but always when I got to the bottom of the back, there would be a little painful spot. And I would think, well, that's interesting. The first one, I thought, oh, this dog must have some back pain too. Then there was the second one. And then there was the third one. And I'm like, all right, here's a pattern. Well, it was right where the spinal cord ended and the spinal fluid is, coming out there. So I think it was a pressure buildup. So both energetically and physically. So it taught me to do, as I was doing energy medicine with those dogs, to really focus on like a cranial sacral, back up at the high part of the back of the skull, the spinal fluid leaves there, and down above the tail, to work on both of those areas. Well, tuning forks are great with vibration. That vibration will just go all the way up and down the spine. So I would teach clients how to use the fork very gently and go to certain spots up the spine to try to keep that energy flowing. Excuse me. So they're very useful for that. Very useful.
Wow. Perhaps on another episode, you'd be open to sharing that with my audience on what they can do at home with the tuning forks.
Yeah, we can get a little stuffed dog and I'll get my own fork and off we'll go. Yeah,
Let's plan on that. That
yeah,
sounds
that sounds
great.
good. I don't think I
Okay,
can get one
coming
of my
attractions
here,
on
but
that.
yeah.
So if you can, in the little time, we're running over, but want to give time because of the Zoom glitches.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how you're integrating your Tesla energetics, the way you're loving, that's one of your newer
Yeah.
passions, how you're integrating that into animal healthcare.
Yeah. And it started for me, again, as I was studying energy and reading the works of Nikola Tesla. He's actually distantly related to me. So I grew up learning about him. So
Wow.
Yeah. So it's no wonder that from the time I was 3 years old, I heard about this man. So I was reading his work, and it was one of those, again, serendipity light bulb moments, because in my life, I had been experiencing this pattern that just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And I felt like I really wasn't making bad choices. It was looking one way. And then 6 months later, there it was again. It was like a soap opera with the same, meanings, but different actors. And then it hit me. It's like, oh, I had just read about Nikola Tesla's theory of magnetic resonance, which states his theory was, if you take like an oscillating device, again, a frequency, put it on the beam of a skyscraper or a tall building and just let it go, it's going to resonate with, because the building's shaking, everything vibrates. Engineers know that. And after time, this little oscillation is going to build so that the whole building shakes, and then it would poof. It's how an opera singer shatters a crystal glass. The frequency hits that and it can't withstand a boom. And I thought, you know what? Why couldn't that happen to our energy field? Why can't something stick to us when we're little and it just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back, but we don't know it. We don't have that understanding of it. So instead of like pushing a child on a swing, instead of slowing the swing down, we increase it because we get angry or victimized or whatever, or fearful. That increases that energy till eventually our skyscraper tumbles, which is an illness, an accident, a midlife crisis, something. And so I started looking at that. That's one thing that I've always been pretty good at, is seeing those patterns, except for myself. It's always harder for ourselves, right? Oh, I can spot it in you, but
Right.
but in this case, I'm like, all right, that's a pattern. So I started like just looking into that and thinking, well, the energetics. Well, then as I was doing my house calls for energy medicine, I started seeing the patterns there. So what was happening is, as I would take care of these pets, I would notice that dog looks like that owner, and that dog's acting like that owner. And isn't that a coincidence? And I thought, all right, I'm working too hard. I finally cracked. Like they said this would happen, and I tried to ignore it and I couldn't. Then it was just everywhere. So now what I tell people is, when your animals are, whether it's a behavior or an illness, look at how that looks like you, and guaranteed it's there. And it's not like we're making them sick. It's not that. It's part of, and it's not with every animal. Some animals just come into a household and they just ground everything. They're just like a whale, there's like, whoomp, others come in to reflect back what we need to see. So I always tell people, look at that animal as if it was you, and look at the metaphors, so it might be chronic pain. What's been painful in your life? If they have a neurologic thing where they're not moving well, where are you not moving? Is it physical? Is it spiritual? Epilepsy, right? I've been looking for the cure to epilepsy, the holistic thing that's going to fix that, for 25 years. Ain't going to find it, because it's all about control. So you try to control something that's about control. So, I tell people, just have fun with it, look at it. And I have absolutely seen these cases where, when the human gets it, the animal shifts. Like, I'll have people, well, when I adopted this dog, it had this whole list of things that were wrong with it. I don't see any of that. I'm like, yeah, you don't need to. That was what he was teaching the first owner. It's a whole new ball game with you. So it's just fascinating. And so over the last 15 years or so, I've been watching it, and it's uncanny. It's just uncanny. And it's amazing, because that really shows you that spiritual connection. Like they come in sometimes to their own, suffering, to help us see what we need to see. So as we see it, we help ourselves, we help them. Right. And so, and some people can't take care of themselves, but they'll take care of the animal. So I say, all right, if you want to help your animal, This is what I want you to do.
Right.
And then they'll do that for themselves because it's going to help their pet that they love so dearly. So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it sounds like we've had similar experiences in
Yeah.
practice, and so much of it is the awareness. You
Yeah.
know, like you can just go, and when I'm busy just doing regular veterinary medicine, you just think drug, surgery, that's it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't go into
Right.
all these, gee, aren't these interesting coincidences? You
Yeah.
know, in my book, Kindred Spirits, I talked to
Yeah.
some top specialists, like,
Yeah.
one of my dear friends, colleagues, Dr. Ogilvy in
Yeah.
oncology at
Yeah.
Colorado, and he was sharing cases of the person had heart failure and the dog had heart failure. And when
Yes.
they separated, the dog got much worse when the person was in the hospital. But when they brought them together, both of them got better,
Yes. It's
and
yes.
there's so many things that once we as veterinarians start opening up, or any animal lover starts opening up, then
Mhm.
to looking at, gee, what an interesting coincidence. And then when you see enough interesting coincidences,
Yeah.
start seeing patterns.
Yes.
And then the patterns become, we put the term anecdotal as
Right.
being condescending. Oh,
Yeah.
that's just anecdotal. But the way everything starts is with observation without attachment,
Yes.
and looking and seeing patterns, and then seeing, is there some basis for it? And that's where our scientific background comes in, to go beyond the anecdotal and say we're seeing patterns.
Exactly. I mean, I will tell people what's the foundation of science? It's observation. You've got to see it, then you develop your hypothesis, then you test it. But if you don't see it, you're never going to test it. And I've talked to behaviorists about this, and one very well-known behaviorist, not here in Ohio, but he said to me, that's just not in my realm of thought. I can't even think about that. And I thought, and you call yourself a scientist, you at least look at it and test it out and see, you can come with skepticism, but you have to be able to see something first.
Well, it brings me such joy to have you on the show and sharing it and your insights on this, because again, so many of us, we felt like we were lone warriors in
Yeah,
this, like,
right. Yeah.
geez, I'm just trying to help. And these are different ways to help. And that's what part of this conscious animal lovers movement. It's a way to harness the healing power of the love of animals, and creating a group supportive environment where we can all talk about this, and we
Mhm.
can move it forward and have a quantum leap
Yeah.
in this healing power of the animals.
Yeah. No pun
So
intended.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry we're starting to run out of time now, but what I would like to do, we'll talk about it, but set
Yeah.
up a time for you to do a tuning fork.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah,
would be
that'd be
so much
great.
fun for the audience. I'm
Sure.
sure they would love, my viewers would love that.
I would love it. And let me just end with one thing, because I don't want people to hear this and then be really beating themselves up because, oh my gosh, my cat is doing this. And that's where using, again, it's just a journey you're walking together. But that's where you're talking about the heart math piece and the coherence and using that heart centered place. So if they can just sit and be very calm, open their hearts, think of something very peaceful, and whatever the situation is, whether it's the problem with their animal or something going on now with this whole coronavirus thing, put the issue into that frequency. So you have an intention of, all right, I'm just opening up this frequency, this very compassionate frequency. Here's my issue. I needed to go into that frequency and then let it go. And just go into that frequency as much as possible. That's what's connecting everything. And so a lot of times that you'll get an idea of how to help your animal, or you'll be guided to the vet who can figure it out, or you'll have a memory and go, oh, it's just that. And then everything shifts. So I want to leave them with something positive in these difficult times, of use that heart powered energy, because it's connected to everything and it's powerful
Oh,
beyond belief.
that's so beautiful to end with that. And with that, I'd just like to invite everyone to check out on Awake TV. Heart Math right now is
Yes.
giving this 4-day global meditation
Yes.
on Awake TV to create that harmonious
Yes.
healing environment to
Yes.
bring the anxiety, stress, concerns of the COVID, all of that, but into this healing space.
Right.
And, you know, HeartMath and Awake TV have aligned to do this, which is beautiful, kind
Yes.
of unfolded from when I brought the scientists from HeartMath onto onto Awakening with Your Animal Family on this. And now it's blossomed
Yes.
into this. So in the midst of all of this, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Wagner, for sharing your wisdom with our audience. And I look forward to, we'll schedule for you when you, as soon as you come back with the tuning forks.
Yeah.
And because that's what we need to all tune into a more harmonious, loving, healing, healthier, harmonious resonance.
Yes. Perfect. I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate
Well, thank you. Okay.
All
And
righty.
thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week on Awakening with Your Animal Family. And please thank and acknowledge Awake TV for having all of us here to help create a more harmonious, healthier, happier environment and raise the vibration of humanity. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.